Hello and welcome to this presentation on health and disability at university. My name is Chloe and I work for Higher Horizons Plus, which is part of the UniConnect programme. All universities have an access and participation plan, which means that universities will help you to succeed no matter what additional needs you might have, because everyone has the right to a rich, fulfilling and enjoyable university experience. This presentation aims to help alleviate any worries that you might have about managing your condition at university. It aims to help you understand who you can turn to before you even get there. And it explains the kind of help that you can receive. So what is meant by the term disability? According to the UK government, you're classed as disabled under the Equality Act 2010 if you have a physical or mental impairment that has a substantial and long-term negative effect on your ability to do daily activities. That's kind of a mouthful, so let's break that down. It covers people with physical disabilities, mental health conditions, long-term health conditions, and specific learning differences. Substantial means it takes longer to do activities than normal. And long term means it has to have lasted for longer than 12 months. So when you apply to university, there are three main applications that you might want to do. The first one is applying to university to the course itself. The second one is applying for student finance. And the third one is applying for accommodation. On your application form, you can choose to disclose a disability. It's important to note that you really don't have to do this. It's only if you want to. If you do disclose a disability, it will help your university put the support in place that you might need, and you'll be able to access more services. You may also be eligible for disabled students allowances, which is extra money that you don't need to pay back, and we'll talk about that in a moment. You might already have an education healthcare plan or an EHC plan. This can sometimes stop when you're 18, and if yours does, you can ask your local authority to pass that information on to your university, which will help them understand more about your condition and more about the kinds of support that you might need. Before you can go, you can already get support. For example, when you're applying to university and you get to the section on talking about your disability, you might want some help filling out that form. Somewhere on that page, there should be contact details of someone who can help. You might also want to contact disability services at the various universities that you're applying for, because you might want to know how they can help you manage your condition. You can either arrange to meet them beforehand separately, or you can go to an open day and meet them there. So when you're applying to university, there are some things that you might want to consider when you're looking at different universities. And these fall under three broad categories of location, accessibility, and support staff. So in terms of location, do you want to be near to your support network? That might be your family or your friends or your personal doctor, anything like that. If you do, you might want to look at a university that is closer to home, or you might want to look at studying by distance learning. That means that you study at home, but you're still gaining a degree through that university. In terms of accessibility, there are a lot of things to consider depending on what your condition is. So you might want to have a look at how accessible the buildings are, whether they have induction loops, whether they have disabled parking spaces, and how close they are to where you're studying. Do they have adequate lighting on campus? How far apart are the buildings? All those kind of questions, and the chances are you'll know your condition and you'll know how you need to manage it. So don't be afraid to approach each university that you apply to and ask them all the questions that you need to ask. They're more than willing to help. Thirdly, we have support staff. Now, support staff are so invaluable at university, and so I've actually done a whole section on these at the end of this presentation. The next thing that you might want to apply for is student finance. And if you declare a disability, You might also be eligible for disabled students' allowances. These are also called DSAs, and that's what I'll refer to them as throughout this presentation. DSAs is money that you don't need to pay back. It covers people with physical disabilities, mental health conditions, long-term illnesses, or specific learning differences. It can be used for things like a non-medical helper, that might be something like a note taker. It can be used for equipment and software, so for example, you might need a digital recorder to record your lessons, or it can be used even to buy a laptop. Specific software could be things like speech to text, and it can be used for travel costs. There's a couple of really important points to remember. Firstly, the money that you get has to be spent on something that relates directly to your condition. Secondly, that the money that you receive is not based on your family income, it's based on needs only. This means, for example, that if your family do earn more money and you don't get as much loan as other people, it won't affect your DSAs and you still don't need to pay your DSA back. Also, whether you're studying part-time, full-time, or by distance learning will affect the amount that you can get. DSAs can be applied for in England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. It will just depend on what student finance system that you're applying to. However, what you can use it for, how you apply, and how you're eligible are very, very similar in each one. If you do choose to live away from university in student accommodation, there are things that you might want to consider. A list of those are on screen now. So in terms of location, you might want to think about where you actually want that to be situated. So for example, if you have mobility concerns and you can't necessarily walk for a long distance, you might want to find accommodation that is as near to where you're studying, where you're being taught, and where you eat as possible. You might want to think about price as well. So you might want to look at what kind of student loan you're eligible for and whether that covers the accommodation that you're looking at. You might want to think about whether you don't mind shared bathrooms or you would prefer to have your own bathroom. Think about whether you need an accessible room. So if you have mobility considerations, for example, if you're a wheelchair user, you would need to search for a university accommodation that has accessible rooms. Are all of the other facilities that you need to use accessible as well? So for example, the laundry rooms. You might want to think about fire safety. So if you are a wheelchair user, do they have a refuge point or an evac chair if you're not on the ground floor? If you have a hearing impairment, do they have flashing fire alarms? And what kind of systems do they have in place for getting you out of that room if you haven't heard the fire alarm? Do you need an additional room for a live-in carer? A lot of universities do have that facility, so obviously shop around, have a look, and definitely you will find universities that can accommodate that. And lastly, think about your length of stay. So a lot of university accommodation gets rented out in the holidays for things like conferences. So you'd only stay during term time. If you don't want the hassle of moving, I know I didn't when I was at university, you might want to look about accommodation that you can stay in throughout the holidays as well. There are some really great resources that are free to use on the internet that will help you when you're applying for university, and we'll have some links to those in the booklet that accompanies this video. So now we've approached the last section of this presentation, which is student support services. So every university has student support services, but they might be called something a little bit different. However, they all function the same way. And they also have specialist support staff that broadly fit into 5 categories. And those are disability services, mental health services, wellbeing support, study support, and welfare support. Let's look at each one of them in turn. Disability services. Every university has a disability advisor who is a named person who is aware of the kind of support that students with disabilities might need. You can arrange to talk to them before you even get to university to get things in place for when you arrive. So some of the things that disability services can do is help you to figure out the best kind of support that you need. They'll put that in something called a learning support plan. They can also help you to talk to your lecturers or other university staff about your condition and how to manage it. They can talk you through applying for DSAs if you haven't already, and they can also signpost you to any other help that you might need outside of the university. So at every university, you will have mental health advisors, and these are trained professionals who know the kind of help and support that you might need for any mental health conditions or any mental health concerns. Universities usually have trained counsellors as well, so if you do need to talk through anything, you can get an appointment with them. There's also a university mental health charity called Student Minds. They're really active throughout the whole of the UK. They work with staff and students throughout universities to improve mental health at universities. General wellbeing support is found at most universities, and they're there to make sure that you have a happy and supported university experience. They offer general advice and guidance, and they can also refer you to more specialist staff within the university itself. And that could be things like disability support or mental health services, as we've already talked about. They often organise programmes, events, and projects designed around wellbeing, and those are often tailored to the university experience. So, for example, during your exams, they might put on things to help you relieve exam stress. On screen is a picture of therapy dogs at Sheffield University. This is an activity that's quite common at a lot of universities, and I can tell you it is wonderful to go during your exams and sit and pet a dog. There's also schemes like peer mentoring. Now, peer mentoring happens at pretty much all universities, and they are other students who help you through your university experience. So they'll listen to any kind of worries or issues that you have, and they'll also talk to you about their experiences at university and try and alleviate any of those worries. Next, we have study support or study skills. It will be called something slightly different in each university, but again, it's very similar. Study support or study skills are staff that are trained in helping you to get through your assignments. So whether that's something like referencing, how to space out an essay, how to write a report, or even how to research, those staff are there to help you. And they're quite often trained in specific learning differences as well, such as dyslexia. If you do suspect that you have a specific learning difference and you do want to get tested, study support staff can help you access a diagnostic assessment. All universities also have assistive technology, so that could be something like adjustable desks, speech to text software, screen readers, or coloured overlays. They also have different coloured papers depending on what your preference is. Libraries as well are there to help you to access all of the materials that you need. So if you need those in a different format, for example, if you need them in large print, or you might need them in CD format to use with a screen reader, libraries are very happy to help you with that as well. In terms of assistive technology, it's important to note that you can also purchase assistive technology and software for your personal computer using your DSAs, and your university will be able to advise you on the best software to purchase. They might even have some software that you can use for free. Lastly, we have welfare support. Welfare support is essentially the health, happiness, and safety of students. In terms of medical issues, there's always trained staff on site that are trained in first aid as well as mental health first aid. In the first week that you get to university, they will recommend which doctors to use, whether that's external doctors that are local or whether that is a doctor's surgery that is actually embedded into the university itself. In terms of security, every university has security staff, and you'll also have an emergency number to call, which again will be given to you in the first week. There's also a safeguarding officer that is designated for each university, and there may be more than one, and they can help you with any safeguarding concerns. In a lot of universities as well, buildings are not accessible to anyone without a university card, and that helps to double up the security. Some accommodation blocks also have security guards that guard the building 24 hours a day. So if this is something that you're looking for, you might want to contact your university beforehand and ask them about which accommodation has that service provided. Some students do feel a lot safer knowing that there's a security guard to go to if they do have any issues. So today we've gone through what is classed as a disability, what to consider when applying to university and applying to university accommodation, what DSAs are and how they can help you, and what kind of support staff are there and how they can assist. Like I said before, you don't need to tell your university about your health or additional need, but if you do, your university can put as much support in place as you might need. If you do have any questions about this presentation or about higher education in general, you can talk to a member of our team at higherhorizons.co.uk/ask, and a member of our team will be happy to talk. Thank you very much.